Welcome back to the channel. This is the Volunteer Build Series. In today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at the braking system. Whoa. What do you mean we're taking a look at the braking system? What happened to the... Whoa. Pump the brakes. What about the wiring harness? What do you mean, what about the wiring harness? Aren't you going to get that done? Immediately, the first thing that we see from this caliper with the piston out is a large puddle of really dark brake fluid. There's also very orangey sediments of rust inside of here. There was actually a large piece inside that I was initially trying to pull out so I could show to the camera, but that seems like it's fallen apart. However, what we can see on the inside is that the condition right there on the back ridge, you can see it, there is just all of that orange, nasty rust inside of there. So that's one of the reasons why I definitely wanted to make sure to rebuild both of these calipers on the car, because one, I felt like this was the right front caliper and I felt like it was already seized or frozen onto the car. It didn't particularly want to move in any easier than it wanted to move out. Spent about half hour, 45 minutes or so cleaning that caliper. It may not look like it because of some of those darker areas on the inside and the camera light isn't exactly the same as what I'm seeing, but it is much better inside of there. I did spend a lot of time trying to get my Scotch-Brite and even like a rolling disc and everything inside of there to clean it as best as I can. I think that is going to be about as best as I can for now. Get taken care of on the vehicle. We're going to have to order the wheel cylinders. Hopefully our parts for the wiring harness are going to be coming in soon and we can get back onto that. But as far as I'm looking at it for today, progress is progress, and that's always a good thing. See you on the next one. Bye! Welcome back to the Volunteer Build Series. Since the last episode didn't end the way that we had hoped, freeing up all the brakes and rebuilding all of the brake calipers, we're going to have to shift our attention. I'll tell you what's in the box. In this box here is our template harness, the harness that we started with and we first ordered as a full kit that would need modification to fit to this vehicle. Once I had that template harness figured out as far as I could, because I was still lacking a brake switch to measure to, and everything else I still had to figure out as far as how to get the harness together, where it was going to land, other components as well. This harness here is a modified harness. I did not completely build this harness. I used it as a template to let me know exactly what I was going to need to do to get appropriate wire lengths and get everything figured out. It was much easier to modify the harness first instead of just outright building one. I'm not completely finished because I do still need to figure out how the brake switch is going to tie into the rest of the harness, but that's part of what I'm doing here on both harnesses. Additionally, in other boxes off to the side, I did get the headlights that I was looking for. So hopefully we can at least take the template harness, which is going to live with this car, and start figuring out how the headlights are going to work and see if that's going to work out for us as well. So it's now been about 2 hours since I was fiddling with installing the template harness and making sure that that was still lined up and everything fit where I wanted it to. Once I had that done, I had to work on figuring out how to get the brake feed signal wire up to where it needed to be. And good news, I don't have to shorten or adjust that wire at all, but I am going to need to have to tie into the power somewhere else in the wire harness. So that camera got really fogged up there. Sorry about that. So those issues were where I was going to run the wires and keep them easy to install and keep me from having to zip tie a lot of things to brake lines or anywhere else. So I had to figure out some P-clamps where to put on the body. I had to make a bracket for where the brake wire was going to go up to the brake signal switch. And the brake switch is actually what gave me the most trouble. So then what I tried to do was just get some extensions with the 5mm Allen socket, heat up the cylinder, honestly, with a heat gun and use some PB blaster to try and just break free the threads. That didn't work either. So then I had to figure, well, what was I going to do? Well, I have nuts. I have a welder. Let's try the old trick. So I tried that a couple times. Set my welder back up to 5 and said, screw it, and I'm just going to go straight down the center, and I'm going to let this fill itself up and then try and work around the edges if I can. That ended up working. So I ended up getting that little tiny bolt finally extracted out of there so that I could actually install my brake light switch and figure out all of my wiring and everything like that. So I've got most of my template harness in, I've made my adjustments, I've got my brake switch hooked up, I've got my horn hooked up, I've got my headlights hooked up. I've tested everything that I can and everything still works, so that's good. Now I'm going to try and actually lay out my test kit, my test harness, and see if I've got my measurements correct. Fingers crossed. Well, I think I've gotten everything taken care of that I can for today. It wasn't as much as I was hoping, but I still made tons of progress. And there is good news. Both the template and the test kit harness fit the vehicle. I've already tested the template harness, at least the front portion of it, to make sure that that still works, and it does. As far as my lengths go, the wires on the front and the rear should have plenty of space to them. As long as I've got wire coming out the top of here, I should be fine. I know it's a real bummer to not get everything taken care of that I had hoped for, and maybe somebody was hoping to see the headlights. Alright, let's take a peek at these headlights. Boy, those are nice. Yeah. Something like that. See you on the next one. Welcome back to another episode of the Volunteer Build Series. In today's episode, I'm going to be focusing on some odd jobs. So let's go ahead and get stuck into it. I'm still waiting on a couple of components to be able to finish out my wiring harnesses the way that I would like to, but there are still some small things on the car that I can continue to keep doing to make progress on the vehicle. Things such as securing my template wiring harness, routing all of those wires, figuring out the layout of those things. There's actually quite a bit of things that I found at the back of the vehicle that do need remedy, and once we get there, you won't believe what I've found. Let's go ahead and get to work. The last time I was here, I started working on securing my wiring harnesses. I actually ended up getting my wire cover already mounted to the vehicle. I could have had this flipped over, however, I like having this kick down here that kind of matches the frame, and if I had it flipped over, it wouldn't really match the way I wanted it to. I had actually already started securing my wiring harness. I used a P-clamp on the backside of the bolt here that helps secure the horn in place. There was already a hole here, so that's why I've decided to utilize it in that fashion. I've got my horn wiring all laid out. I don't think I'm going to have any interferences there either. I then routed the wires underneath of this oil vapor bottle. I've got the left front secured to the nose piece here with a zip tie just because there is no better way to really do that. But what I've done with the rest of it is utilize some P-clamps where they already have bolts run through to hold the front nose cone. Now, this wire is not exactly where I would like it, but ultimately it's not where it's going to be placed just yet. I don't know if I'm going to run my wires up the inside of this nose piece and connect to my headlights. I'll have to figure that out when I get there. But I have already worked on securing the front portions of my harness to get that taken care of. Now that I've showed you around what I've already been up to, I'm at the back of the car and I'm going to show you what I'm faced with. I've already looked into these items, but I've put them back together the way that they came off so that I can show you exactly what I'm dealing with. If you watched a couple of the videos already, you may remember from a previous episode there were a couple of items at the back of the car that I was a bit concerned with, such as how the fuel pump was mounted and how that had the fuel line run. All of the wiring back there felt very flimsy. There's actually a pinched fuel line at the bottom of the outlet on the tank where it comes out. So I'm going to start focusing on a couple of those things back here and get those things remedied if I can. So first things first, the fuel pump was hung somewhere along here, which, as where it was mounted, was creating a large pinch point down here at the bottom of this fuel line. I could feel it before and I could still feel it a little bit. It's not a great thing to have situated like that. It's not a terrible pinch point. Then what they ended up doing was putting a washer on, running the nut in, and it's actually ended up bending that hanger just a bit. The other thing that I noticed while I was looking at everything last time and this time around was that the wiring that was on this ground bolt felt very flimsy. Now, the additional ground here seems okay. The ring terminal doesn't seem bothered. Doesn't seem like it's, been affected at all, but this is my biggest gripe when I took this apart. They didn't even put a ring terminal to ground the fuel pump out. They just had it wrapped around the bolt. I don't know who did that, but it's going to get fixed. I'm surprised this car ran and that fuel pump was working at all. Alright, well, I have stuck at it for a couple more hours. As of right now, it is currently 1:45, and my core is actually starting to get cold. It was snowing earlier, and again, no heat in this shop. Just right now, I am freezing cold, and I gotta go. I will come back another time. Bye-bye!